Have you ever looked at your life and realized you've been living for everyone but yourself? You wake up each day trying to be what others need, pleasing, performing, adjusting, explaining, until one day you can't recognize the person staring back at you. You've given so much, cared so deeply, tried so hard, but somehow you feel empty. Not because you don't love others, but because you forgot to love yourself. It's easy to fall into that trap. You're told to be kind, to be patient, to put others first. And while that sounds noble, somewhere along the way you start shrinking. You stop expressing what you really feel. You silence your opinions to avoid conflict. You suppress your dreams so no one feels uncomfortable. You start living in a way that looks peaceful on the outside but feels suffocating on the inside. You tell yourself it's temporary. You convince yourself that someday you'll have time for you. But that day never comes because self-abandonment becomes a habit. You get so used to prioritizing everyone else that you forget how to even hear your own voice. And when you do, it's faint, fragile, almost drowned out by guilt and fear. But there's a moment, a quiet, piercing moment, when something inside you snaps. You realize that no amount of approval will fill the emptiness of betraying yourself, that no validation can make up for the exhaustion of constantly performing. You see the truth. You can't keep giving from an empty soul. You can't keep breaking yourself just to keep others whole. That realization changes everything. It feels like a shock at first. Then it feels like grief. You start to see how much of your life was built on expectations that weren't even yours. You see how often you said yes when your heart screamed no. You realize how long you've been waiting for permission to live your own life. And then it hits you. You don't need permission. You never did. Choosing yourself is not about turning your back on love. It's about redefining it. It's about giving yourself the same compassion, patience, and forgiveness you give to everyone else. It's about understanding that you can care for others without abandoning your own peace. Because real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. It invites you to be yourself. When you finally choose yourself, something powerful awakens. You start feeling again. You start breathing again. You start existing for reasons that come from within. You stop chasing approval and begin following alignment. You stop begging to be seen and start seeing yourself. That's the moment your energy shifts, your confidence rebuilds, your boundaries strengthen. You begin walking with a different kind of peace, the kind that can't be taken away. Yes, it will hurt. You'll face resistance. Some people won't understand. They'll call you distant, selfish, or changed, and you will be changed. But that change is not loss. It's freedom. It's the return to who you were before the world told you who to be. So stay. Stay with this truth. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the awakening. Because the moment you choose yourself, everything begins to align. The peace you crave, the strength you've lost, the purpose you've been searching for. This is not the end of something. It's the beginning of becoming everything you were meant to be. When was the last time you truly did something just for you? Not to please someone, not to prove anything, not to be accepted, just because it felt right for your soul. Most people can't answer that question. Because somewhere between responsibility and approval, they lost themselves. They became what others needed, reliable, loyal, predictable. But in the process, they forgot who they really are. You've been told your whole life that being selfless is the highest form of love, that putting others first makes you a good person, that sacrifice is noble. But what they never told you is that constant sacrifice kills your spirit. You start smiling when you're not okay. You start saying it's fine when it's not. You become the person who holds everything together while falling apart quietly inside. You wake up one day realizing you've been living according to everyone else's expectations. Parents, friends, society, even people who barely know you. Every choice, every compromise, every apology, all to avoid disappointing others. You've built your life around keeping the peace, yet the only person you're at war with is yourself. And deep down you know it, that silent exhaustion that never seems to go away. It's not from doing too much. It's from doing too much that doesn't honor you. But the truth is, life doesn't reward self-abandonment. It doesn't celebrate the ones who hide their light to keep others comfortable. It rewards authenticity. It rewards courage. It rewards the moment you finally look in the mirror and say, I matter too. Because the second you choose yourself, you stop living on autopilot. You stop existing just to survive and start existing to become. It takes strength to reach that point, to stop explaining yourself, to stop justifying your needs, to stop apologizing for having boundaries. It takes courage to choose peace over people who drain you, growth over comfort, and authenticity over approval. But once you do, something incredible happens. You start to feel alive again. You start to remember what joy feels like without conditions. You begin to trust yourself again. Yes, it's hard. Choosing yourself will make people uncomfortable. It will confuse those who benefited from your silence. Some will call you selfish, but let them. Because what they don't see is that self-love isn't selfish. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty heart. You can't give real love when you're disconnected from your own. The world doesn't need another person pretending to be fine. It needs people who are whole, present, and alive. When you finally choose yourself, everything shifts. You stop chasing people who don't see your worth. You stop saying yes when your soul screams no. You stop measuring your value by how much you do for others. You begin living with intention, not obligation. And that's when the peace comes, quietly, powerfully, beautifully. It fills the spaces where guilt used to live. It replaces exhaustion with clarity. It reminds you that you were never meant to live small. So stay with this message until the end, because this is the truth you've been running from. The world will keep taking until you decide to stop giving away what was never theirs to own, your energy, your worth, your voice. And the moment you finally choose yourself above all else, you don't lose people. You lose the parts of you that were never real. You gain everything that was waiting for you all along: freedom, peace, and the power to finally live on your own terms. Once you begin choosing yourself, guilt will try to pull you back. It will whisper that you're abandoning people, that you're becoming cold, ungrateful, or selfish. It will make you question your heart, your kindness, your intentions. You'll feel it deep in your chest, that uneasy ache that tells you you're doing something wrong simply because you're doing something different. But guilt is not truth. It's a habit born from years of conditioning, a psychological echo of every moment you were taught that love means pleasing others, even when it costs you peace. You were never meant to live in constant sacrifice. You were meant to live in balance. Real love doesn't demand that you destroy yourself to prove you care. Real kindness doesn't require you to say yes when your heart says no. The guilt you feel is not proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you're growing. It's the discomfort that comes from breaking the pattern of self-abandonment. It's your old identity fighting to survive while your true self starts to rise. This battle happens quietly inside you. You'll feel torn between wanting to protect your peace and wanting to keep everyone happy. You'll feel the weight of expectations pressing against your desire for freedom. But every time you choose to honor your truth, no matter how small the decision, you reclaim a piece of your power. That's how transformation begins. Not in one grand moment of clarity, but in the quiet strength of 1,000 small choices that say, I matter too. Some people won't understand your growth. They'll say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped being the person who bends just to be accepted. You've stopped carrying the emotional weight that was never yours. You've stopped apologizing for being human. That's not selfishness, that's self-respect. And while others might resist that shift, your soul will breathe for the first time in years. The psychology of this transformation is powerful. When you stop attaching your worth to how others see you, your brain rewires itself. You begin to detach from the need for external validation. You stop living in survival mode and start creating from a place of authenticity. Your nervous system calms, your confidence strengthens. You stop seeking approval because you finally approve of yourself. That's what true emotional freedom feels like, a calm certainty that doesn't need to be explained. There will still be moments when the guilt returns, like an old voice asking if you're sure. But instead of silencing it, you learn to understand it. You realize it's not your enemy. It's the sign you're leaving behind an identity built on fear. And fear only exists where love is missing. So you start replacing guilt with grace, fear with truth, hesitation with conviction. Every decision aligned with your peace becomes a step toward your power. Soon you stop overthinking your boundaries. You stop explaining your choices. You stop trying to earn your right to rest, to say no, to walk away. You begin trusting your own energy. You realize that anyone who loves you will respect your healing, not guilt you for it. You understand that peace isn't found by pleasing people. It's found by protecting your soul. That's the turning point where guilt loses its control. You stop fighting with who you were and start standing in who you are. You stop living to be liked and start living to be free. And in that freedom, you discover something you never knew you had, an unshakable sense of self, built not on approval, but on truth. When you finally stop living for others, a deep silence follows, the kind of silence that feels uncomfortable at first, because you've spent so long surrounded by noise, opinions, expectations, constant validation. When all that fades, you're left alone with yourself. And that can feel like loneliness. But it's not the kind that breaks you. It's the kind that heals you. It's the kind that strips away every distraction and forces you to face what's been buried beneath the surface. You start noticing how much of your identity was built on who you were to others. The friend who's always there, the partner who always gives, the one who fixes, comforts, supports. But now, without those roles to hide behind, you begin to see yourself differently. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting not what the world expects from you, but who you truly are when no one is watching. That realization is both terrifying and liberating, because in that space, you meet the version of yourself that's been waiting for you all along, the one who isn't defined by approval, who doesn't need to perform, who simply exists without apology. This solitude becomes sacred. It's where you begin to understand what peace actually feels like. You notice how your nervous system softens, how your thoughts slow down, how your energy shifts from constant giving to gentle being. You start hearing your own intuition again, the quiet voice that always knew what you needed but got drowned out by the noise of everyone else's opinions. You begin trusting it, nurturing it, listening to it because it speaks truth. It's the voice of your soul reminding you that you've always been enough. At first, the emptiness feels heavy. You'll miss the distractions that once kept you from feeling this depth. You'll crave the comfort of chaos because it was familiar. But as you sit with the stillness, something extraordinary happens. You stop fearing it. You begin to crave it, because now silence doesn't feel like loneliness anymore. It feels like home. It becomes the space where you recharge, reflect, and realign. You start to realize that solitude isn't the absence of love. It's the foundation of it. Psychologists call this stage self-reconnection, the process of rebuilding your relationship with yourself after years of emotional neglect. It's where your self-awareness grows, your emotional intelligence deepens, and your resilience strengthens. Start understanding your triggers, your patterns, your true desires. You begin to recognize the difference between what feels heavy and what feels true. You no longer chase connection out of fear of being alone. You seek it from a place of fullness, not emptiness. And that's where healing truly begins. You stop waiting for others to fill your void, because you no longer live from lack. You fill your own cup. You learn to enjoy your own company. You discover that peace isn't found in being surrounded by people, it's found in being connected to yourself. In this sacred stillness, you start seeing the world differently. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop searching for happiness outside yourself because you realize it was never lost. It was buried beneath layers of noise and neglect. The loneliness that once scared you becomes your teacher. It shows you that the most powerful relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. And once you build that foundation, once you truly love your own presence, you'll never settle for less than peace again, because you'll know that solitude isn't your punishment. It's your power. When you begin to feel at peace in your own company, something inside you shifts. You start to see that not everyone deserves access to your energy. You begin to recognize how much of your pain came from allowing people to take what they never earned. That's when boundaries are born, not from anger, but from clarity. You finally understand that protecting your peace is not rejection, it's self-respect. Setting boundaries is one of the purest acts of love you can give yourself. It's the moment you decide that your energy, your time, your mind are sacred. It's when you stop explaining your worth and start embodying it. You no longer chase validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You no longer beg to be understood because you're finally at peace with being misunderstood. That's freedom, the kind that grows when you no longer need approval to be whole. At first, boundaries feel uncomfortable. You'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you're being too harsh, too distant, too cold. You'll feel the pull of old habits trying to drag you back into overgiving. But discomfort is part of healing. It's the tension between your old self that seeks acceptance and your new self that seeks authenticity. The more you honor that discomfort, the stronger you become. Every time you say no when your soul means no, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you choose silence over explaining yourself to someone who doesn't listen, you protect your peace. Every time you walk away from chaos instead of trying to fix it, you reclaim your power. Psychologically, boundaries redefine your emotional framework. They teach your mind that safety doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from honoring yourself. They restore balance to your nervous system, freeing you from the constant fight or flight of emotional overextension. When you set boundaries, you teach your brain that love doesn't have to hurt, that care doesn't have to come with exhaustion, and that connection doesn't require self-betrayal. Some people won't like your boundaries. They'll accuse you of changing. They'll feel rejected because your limits expose their expectations. But those reactions are not yours to carry. The truth is, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always see your healing as rebellion. But that's okay. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be whole. The more you practice self-respect, the more you attract people who mirror it. You start noticing that peace feels more natural than chaos. Conversations feel lighter. Relationships feel balanced. You stop trying to earn love and start receiving it freely because you finally become the kind of person who treats their own heart with care. You no longer wait for others to protect you. You protect yourself. This change doesn't make you hard. It makes you honest. It doesn't close your heart. It refines it. You stop giving pieces of yourself away and start sharing from overflow. You begin to understand that love without boundaries is not love. It's dependency. And peace without self-respect is not peace. It's avoidance. Every time you honor your boundaries, you strengthen the relationship between who you are and who you're becoming. You begin to walk differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you finally know who you are. And in that awareness, you realize something powerful. Boundaries aren't barriers to love. They're the foundation of it. They keep your soul safe, your energy pure, and your path aligned with truth. When you start honoring your boundaries and standing in your truth, life begins to unfold in ways you never imagined. The weight you carried for years starts to lift. The exhaustion that once felt normal begins to fade. You no longer wake up with anxiety over pleasing others because your peace has become your priority. You start to feel something you may not have felt in a long time: freedom. The kind that doesn't come from escaping life, but from finally living it on your own terms. Freedom is quiet. It doesn't need to be announced or proven. It simply exists within you, steady and unshakable. You stop reacting to everything around you and start responding from a place of calm power. The noise of other people's opinions begins to lose its hold. You realize you no longer need to control outcomes or chase validation. You've learned that peace is not something you find, it's something you create, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. This freedom doesn't mean your life becomes perfect. Challenges still appear, people still test you, and the world still moves unpredictably. But the difference is, you're no longer ruled by fear. You no longer crumble under rejection or bend under pressure. You've learned to anchor yourself in truth, to trust your own energy, and to let go of what no longer aligns. You've stopped running from yourself, and that's what changes everything. Psychologically, this transformation is the moment you enter alignment. It's when your thoughts, emotions, and actions finally move in the same direction. Your brain stops living in constant survival mode because you're no longer betraying yourself. You begin to feel coherence between what you believe and what you live. That alignment creates inner stability, the foundation of real happiness. You no longer depend on circumstances or people to feel whole. You become the source. With this awareness, your perception of success changes. It's no longer about status, attention, or comparison. Success becomes peace of mind. It becomes waking up with gratitude, walking through life without pretending, and being able to sleep at night knowing you stayed true to yourself. You realize the real reward for choosing yourself isn't recognition. It's liberation. It's that deep breath that feels like coming home after years of wandering. And the beauty of this freedom is how it ripples outward. The more you choose yourself, the more the world mirrors that energy back to you. You start attracting people who respect your boundaries, opportunities that align with your purpose, and experiences that match your frequency. You begin to see that the external world was never the problem. It was your internal disconnection. The moment you healed that, everything outside began to shift naturally. You no longer chase love, you become love. You no longer beg for peace, you embody it. You no longer seek permission, you give it to yourself. And in that space, life becomes lighter. You stop surviving and start creating. You stop waiting and start becoming. Every decision comes from clarity, not fear. Every step feels guided, not forced. This is the quiet revolution of choosing yourself. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. It's about reclaiming your voice, your power, your direction. And as you live from that truth, you realize that freedom isn't something the world gives you. It's something you give yourself when you decide you're finally done living small. You were never meant to fit into the expectations of others. You were meant to rise beyond them, and now you finally are. When you start living in alignment with yourself, something extraordinary happens. You no longer seek to escape life. You start to experience it. Every moment begins to feel different. Even the quiet ones carry meaning. You begin to realize that peace was never about having a life without problems, but about becoming a person who no longer breaks under them. The freedom you feel is not loud or dramatic. It's steady, grounded, and deeply personal. It's the kind that comes from knowing you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone, not even to yourself. This kind of freedom changes the way you see everything. You stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, what do I think of me? You stop chasing the illusion of perfection and start embracing the power of authenticity. You no longer fear being misunderstood because your peace no longer depends on being accepted. You've learned that rejection doesn't define your value. It reveals alignment. And once you understand that, no one can take your power away again. This is the moment when you begin to truly live. Not to meet expectations, not to impress, but to express. You start walking through life lighter, unburdened by guilt or fear. You make choices that honor your spirit, even if they confuse others. You begin to love without attachment, to give without losing yourself, to stand alone without feeling lonely. That is the highest form of strength, the kind that comes from deep inner wholeness. Psychologically, this stage is where integration happens. Your mind and your soul finally meet. You no longer suppress your truth to fit in. You no longer wear masks to be liked. You allow yourself to be seen as you are without the need to hide your vulnerability. You realize that authenticity is not weakness, it's liberation, because when you are no longer performing, you have nothing to lose. You begin to live from a place of deep emotional integrity, where your actions match your intentions and your words reflect your truth. And in that state, your energy shifts. You stop attracting chaos because you no longer resonate with it. You stop tolerating half love, half effort, half peace. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because authenticity always draws in what's meant for it. You no longer chase people. To stay, you allow what's real to remain and let what's not dissolve. You finally understand that alignment is not about control. It's about surrendering to what is true. Your confidence becomes quiet but unshakable. You no longer need recognition to feel seen. You no longer crave validation because your self-worth is self-sustaining. You start moving with purpose, speaking with clarity, and acting with conviction. You stop living small because small no longer fits who you've become. You are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are living it, fully, fearlessly, intentionally. And when you reach this level of peace, something even greater unfolds. You begin to inspire others, not by trying, but simply by being. Your presence becomes a reminder of what's possible when someone chooses truth over fear. People feel your energy before you even speak. You become proof that self-love is not arrogance, it's alignment with the divine part of you that was always whole. You realize, finally, that choosing yourself was never about leaving anyone behind. It was about returning home to the person you were always meant to be, the person who leads with truth, walks in peace, and radiates strength, not from perfection, but from presence. And once you reach that state, there's no going back. Because once you've tasted what it means to live in full alignment with who you are, anything less than peace feels foreign. Anything less than truth feels impossible.
How do you know you've finally become free?